You are watching Maximus Aviation.
According to a friend of the channel and super aviation reporter Dominic Gates of the Seattle Times, the NTSB said Tuesday in a preliminary report that the Alaska Airlines January 5th Flight 1282 midair blowout of a fuselage door plug has confirmed that 4 bolts that should have kept the door plug in place were never installed when Boeing delivered the aircraft. The 4 bolts that prevent upward movement of the mid-exit door plug were missing, the report states. The NTSB said the door plug was opened at Boeing's Renton factory so a team from fuselage supplier Spirit Aerosystem of Wichita, Kansas, could repair damaged rivets adjacent to the door plug on the 737 MAX 9 jet. The fix required removal of insulation and interior panels at the location and the opening of the door plug. After the rivets were repaired, a Boeing team worked to restore the interior. The FAA requires that every malfunctioning job that goes into assembly of an airplane be documented, and critical tasks have to be signed off by quality inspectors. But still, a month after the blowout, Boeing hasn't provided the NTSB with documentation about who opened and reclosed the door plug, how exactly it was done, and who authorized the work. The NTSB report states that the investigation continues to determine what manufacturing documents were used to authorize the opening and closing of the left mid-exit door plug during the rivet rework. The NTSB said the door plug was manufactured by Spirit in Malaysia and shipped to Wichita in May of 2023. There it was installed on the MAX 9 fuselage destined for Alaska Airlines. According to the NTSB and Boeing's records, only one minor quality issue was noted in Spirit's records, but it did not require any rework. Otherwise, there were no non-conformances noted before the fuselage arrived by train on August 31st at Boeing's Renton final assembly plant from Spirit Aerosystems with the door plug fully installed. The following day, damage to 5 rivets on the frame around the door plug was recorded. The work to repair those rivets wasn't done until mid-September. By then, the fuselage interior insulation and sidewalls had been installed. To do the repair on the rivets, the insulation and sidewalls covering the door plug were removed, and the door plug was opened. To open the mid-exit door plug, the 2 vertical movement arrestor bolts and 2 upper guide track bolts had to be removed. A team of Spirit mechanics completed repair of the rivets on September 19. After the rivet rework was completed by Spirit during second shift that day, Boeing personnel discussed restoring the interior. A photo taken by a Boeing mechanic was texted to another at about 6:40 p.m. that day, apparently to provide the recipient a progress report on the restoration work. It shows the door plug back in place and closed, but with no retention bolts in place. Photo documentation obtained from Boeing shows evidence on the left-hand mid-air door plug closed with no retention hardware bolts in the 3 visible locations. Some insulation hung down and obscured the view of the location of the 4th bolt in the photo. U.S. Representative Rick Larson of Everett, Washington, the leading Democrat on the House Transportation Safety Committee, said in a statement Tuesday, Boeing has serious work to do to rebuild its safety culture and the confidence of its customers and the flying public. Failure to reinstall bolts on a safety-critical component of this MAX 737-9 aircraft is a serious error that signals larger control lapses that must be corrected. After noting that it had received no documentation on how the work was done, the NTSB said that interviews of Boeing and Spirit Aerosystem personnel will be scheduled at a future date. Citing a person familiar with how the work was done, the Seattle Times reported last month that it was Boeing mechanics who improperly reinstalled the door plug. After the NTSB report was posted online, Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun said in a statement, "Whatever final conclusions are reached, Boeing is accountable for what happened. An event like this must not happen on an airplane that leaves our factory. We simply must do better," Calhoun said. "We are implementing a comprehensive plan to strengthen quality." Spirit Aerosystems spokesperson Joe Bucino said that they are also working closely with Boeing and regulators on continuous improvement to their processes. The explosive opening of a door-sized hole in the passenger cabin of a 737 MAX 9 at 16,000 feet over Portland terrified passengers. One mother held tight to her teenage son seated just in front of the hole, as the clothing he was wearing was ripped from his upper body and blown out into the cold night sky. The NTSB report says the boy's seat was pulled backward and out approximately 10 degrees and 20 degrees towards the opening. The incident, which could have been catastrophic if it had occurred at a higher altitude, stirred outrage toward Boeing and brought the FAA's oversight of the airplane production under scrutiny. The door plug is held in place while pressurized by 12 metal stop pads. The only way it could have blown out is if the plug had shifted upward so that the stop fittings on the plug had moved above the stop pads on the door frame. That is how it's open for maintenance. The 4 bolts the NTSB says were missing should have been installed to ensure it couldn't physically move upward. And in another photo in the NTSB preliminary report, it shows deformation on the lower edge of a stop fitting on the door plug and a matching deformation on the upper edge of the corresponding stop pad. The photo clearly illustrates how the two were misaligned and barely still in contact when the explosive blowout occurred and finally ripped the fitting over and away from the stop pad. Yet another photo in the report shows one of the 4 critical bolt holes, this one on the upper aft side. The paint in the hole was intact and pristine with no evidence of any contact damage. Likewise for the other holes. NTSB investigators concluded from the absence of contact damage or deformation around the holes that the bolts simply were not in place when the door blew out violently. The plane was delivered to Alaska on October 31st and flew over 2 months without the critical bolts before the incident. With the 4 retaining bolts missing, vibration during landing and takeoff over those 2 months must have gradually shifted the plug upwards until the night of January 5th, when the edges of the 12 stop fittings and corresponding pads were barely in contact and the plug was primed to blow out, leaving Boeing and the FAA scrambling to ensure that this can never happen again. Since the Alaska incident, Boeing has publicly taken steps to shore production quality both inside its MAX assembly plant in Renton and at the Wichita factory where its supplier Spirit AeroSystems builds the entire fuselage frame, including initial installation of the door plug. Boeing added quality inspections in both factories, invited airlines to send teams to inspect their planes while being built, and promised an independent external audit of its quality management. Last month, Boeing held a quality stand-down in Renton, pausing all work in the factory for a day, so employees could join discussion sessions on how to enhance quality and safety. And the FAA has moved aggressively to show it too is strengthening its oversight at Boeing. Well, there's not much more I can add. I think the story speaks for itself, but I would love to hear your comments. So let me know down below. Well, that's all I have for this week's Boeing Max wrap-up. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and do all that YouTube stuff. And remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time, in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.